Hi, you don't want to miss this episode. We're going to break down the book, The Bitcoin Standard. If you're interested in Bitcoin, this is the foundational book that explains the evolution of money and why Bitcoin is the solution. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I am Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing today?
Hi, Darren. I am doing great. Excited to talk about Bitcoin some more today. I always learn more every time we have one of these episodes, so I'm excited to dig in. I, read the book, and I want to have a chat with you about it, get your insights on it as well. So, yeah, I'm excited for this podcast.
Yeah, I love learning more, and I love learning more about Bitcoin. And it reminds me, Christina, we're always telling people, you are your greatest asset. If you want to be wealthy, you need to invest in yourself. And I think just learning about Bitcoin or learning about the infinite banking strategy or concept, learning about, cash value life insurance, learning about stocks, whatever it is, like that's really an investment in you. And, the old Bitcoiners say, everyone hates Bitcoin until they spend 100 hours at it. And then they kind of like it after 100 hours of research. Then they kind of like it. And once they're at 10,000 hours, they're all in. So again, I encourage people to check this book out. So we're going to do the book review of the Bitcoin Standard. Literally, if any Bitcoin person's out there, you've probably heard of this book, but we're going to break it down and talk about money and the history of money and what we've used for money. And then finally, why Bitcoin is the solution. So the book's from Saifedean Ammous, and it's called The Bitcoin Standard.
And before we jump in, though, I just want to remind everybody, if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please make sure you subscribe and leave that 5-star review. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, please make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you always know when new content is coming out. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Control and Compound on Instagram and TikTok. So ready to dig in now. I've got that out of the way. I know the book really does go through the evolution of money, right? Which I thought was pretty cool. Like he brings it all the way back to the basics. So I figured for this podcast, we can really start there. Like let's talk about the functions of money, because I think that's kind of starting at the beginning, right? What's the functions of money? Let's kind of chat about that.
So perfect place to start, because when you think of like, what is money? What's the whole purpose of money? What are the functions that money, a good money supply would do? And the three functions, number one is medium of exchange. So in other words, widely accepted. So, you're not going to go in there and they'll, oh, we don't take this. You go to a store, no, we don't take that. We take chickens, we take cows. You want a medium of exchange that is widely accepted. Number two, you want a unit of value. So a unit of value is, again, 1 ounce of gold or one piece of gold is worth 10 chickens, is worth 5 steaks. You want a unit of value so you can price things. So you're not bartering every time going, well, how many chickens will you give me for my wheat? So you want like a unit of value so you know what it is worth. And then you want a store of value. And this is a big one for Bitcoin. Michael Saylor talks about a store of value a lot. And to be a store of value, it needs to be easily divisible. So you need to be able to break up whatever money it is into smaller denominations or smaller pieces. You got to be able to use it across space, which means, we have this thing called the internet now. You're not always just handing people money for a good. Sometimes you're buying online, you're buying in another country. So it's got to be able to go across space. And it's really, this is the key, it's got to be across time. And what that means is it has to keep its value throughout the years. So maintaining the value is a huge one, and that's really fits into the Bitcoin, the Bitcoin Standard book and the whole Bitcoin protocol.
Yeah, and I think he's really like building out the base for us in this book as to why Bitcoin does that. But let's take it back to regular money, because I think it builds the full picture. How does money maintain that value that you talk about that we need, right? Let's kind of go through that.
Sure. So how does money maintain value? So a couple of key terms we're going to go through. We're going to go through hard money and easy money. And hard money is difficult to increase supply. Okay, so gold's a prime example. It's hard to triple the amount of gold out there. So we want hard money where it's hard to increase supply. Easy money, like the fiat money or paper money we have now, is easy to increase supply. You can just turn on the printing presses. Or one example years ago, he talked about in the book, years ago in Africa, for like 3,000 years, they used seashells as money. And they were hard to come by. They didn't have a lot of them. And then all of a sudden, this little thing, called a boat came along, and all of a sudden there's enough seashells. They got unlimited amounts of seashells, so the supply was able to increase astronomically, and the value collapsed, and that money didn't work anymore. Another one is copper, the old copper penny. Well, basically the earth is made of copper. So if copper ever goes up in value, what's going to happen? Or if copper ever went up significantly in value, then we're just going to mine a boatload more of it because it's really an unlimited supply of copper in the world. So that's like easy money and hard money. So you want hard money. And then the next term we're going to talk about is the flow ratio, stock to flow ratio. So you hear, for years I used to hear this term till I figured it out a number of years ago. What is stock to flow ratio? People are talking about the flow on the news network, on the business news network, and you're like, what do they mean? Well, stock equals the existing supply. So how much of it is out there right now, okay? So you want a lot of supply so people can exchange it. And then flow represents how much new production is being made. So what you want on this ratio is a high number on the top, the stock, and a low number on the amount of new production. So you don't want the ability to just print unlimited amounts of it like the seashells, like the copper. You want a low production or low increase in supply, but you need a big supply to start with. So in a perfect world, we want a high ratio, a bunch out there with only a little bit coming on the market each year. So that would be a high stock to flow ratio. So gold is really the original hard money. There's all kinds of gold in the world. We've been mining it forever. So there's a huge supply, but it's really hard to produce gold. Now, we are producing gold, and we're always having new discoveries, and it is sometimes increasing, but it's not increasing at an exponential rate because it's really hard to mine. It's dangerous. It's very costly. The converse of that is paper money. It is, as we've seen in the last number of years with every government just about, it's really easy to print money. You just turn the printing presses on or central bank pushes a couple buttons, banks loan out money they don't have. Easy to increase the supply or new production of paper money. So we want a high stock to flow ratio.
Yeah, which is where kind of the gold comes in, because as as that paper money gets printed, that value goes down, and we know gold kind of remains steady in that, which kind of brings us back to the book when he dives into gold and maybe the reason why we're not using gold like we used to, right? Because we did have a solution. We all used gold before, so why aren't we still using that solution today? Why did that change?
Yeah, so when we talk about how money functions, gold's awesome, right? We have that high stock, low flow ratio, but it's not divisible very easily. So you're not going to carry around a bar of gold and then say, oh, I only want to buy that pack of gum. Try to figure out how much gold to shave off that. It's very hard to transport, right? If you're in Vancouver and you want to buy something in Toronto and you want to pay by gold, it's pretty hard to lug that gold, or cost prohibitive to lug that gold to Toronto. So it's not easy to transport. And there was fraud, a lot of fraud with gold, the old gold clipping. So very people take the gold coins and they clip a little piece off. They take a little piece off. They'd shake the bag of gold to try to get the gold dust off it. So eventually people wouldn't take pieces of gold because they were so clipped on the ends, and then that didn't work. But really the solution for all that was the gold standard, right? We're talking about the Bitcoin standard today, but first there was the gold standard. And the gold standard, so we all heard about the gold standard, but really what that was paper-based money backed by gold. So if they had a dollar bill, it represented $1 worth of gold, which was great. And the gold standard worked for years. Countries just didn't have the ability to produce more paper money at will because they needed the gold reserves in order to print the money. So the gold standard was the gold standard. That was a wonderful concept that was used for years in the world.
Yeah, which we're trying to get back to with Bitcoin is kind of what we're doing. But when was it when the gold standard, when they removed the gold standard, that changed a lot of things for a lot of people, right? It changed the way that money was looked at, how money was valued. It really changed the whole basis of using gold. When was that again, when we went through the gold standard? Change?
Yeah. So the big push coming off the gold standard was World War I. So you had a lot of European countries needed money for the war, and they said, we have these printing presses, let's not worry about being backed by gold. And they started printing money. And once they started printing money not backed by gold, it was easy money. They were printing it. Great. They funded the war. Then what happens after the war? We have all this reconstruction and we got to grow the economy. So they started printing more. So if you think of increasing the money supply, printing more money, if you increase the money supply at 5% a year, in 15 years, you double the money supply. If you double the money supply, you cut its value in half.
Yeah.
So at 5%. At 7%, which is about what a lot of countries are doing now, that's every 10 years, your currency value is cut in half. So when you look at the stats of a US dollar in 1913 has depreciated 99% till today, well, that's because the money supply continually is increased, and you compound that over a long period of time, and that's the issue we have. So the other problem with fiat currency, so fiat currency is just not backed by gold, just printing of the dollars. There's kind of two ways you pay for things. There's cash, and that's cumbersome. You got to be person to person. Or what we use with fiat currency now is we use third-party intermediary, which basically means a credit card company, PayPal, or banks. Try to send money to Europe or Africa from the United States or someplace, and you're going to have your challenges. You're going to have bank fees. You're going to have bank fees on this end, bank fees on the other end, currency exchange fees, both ends. So it's a very cumbersome, costly way to transport money over, especially to different countries, but even to buy things with credit card, PayPal, you could have 2, 3, 4% depending upon the credit card. So that's really the issue with fiat currency. They can print unlimited amounts, it devalues it, and it's expensive. And anytime you have a third-party intermediary, you're subject to fraud, right? Somebody's going to take your money and not pass it on like they were supposed to.
Yeah, so we've gone through a lot of, the fiat money and why it's not working. Like, I think the book did a very good job in explaining as to why it's not working. Hasn't been working from some time, for the sounds of it. But we haven't really dug into Bitcoin and how he talks about in the book that Bitcoin is the solution to all of these problems. So I think we should, bring it back, tie it back with Bitcoin and how he explains in the book, how Amos explains in the book, how Bitcoin can be the solution to these issues that we're having with fiat currency.
Yeah, so the argument is before we had the gold standard, but now we should have the Bitcoin standard. So our money should be basically Bitcoin. And it basically solves all those problems we talked about earlier in this episode. So there's no government control. Nobody can decide tomorrow, I'm just going to keep printing as much Bitcoin as I want to grow the economy, to fund the war, to pay for all my special government projects. There's no third party needed. So in that example, you want to send money to Africa, it's going to take you a second or two, and it's going to be next to no fees. You can electronically send over the internet. So no third party, less fraud, less fees, easier. And it's the ultimate hard money. It's the hardest money out there. So there's a maximum of 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be mined. And that cannot change. It'll never change. 21 million is the max. And we're around 20 million now. So each year they can mine it and they can increase the supply a little bit. Okay, so we've got small increase in supply, but a large amount out there. So our stock to flow ratio is fantastic. And we know with certainty you can't go past 21 million. So that means as value goes up, you can't increase production. So copper goes up in price, they increase production. Bitcoin goes up in price, you can't increase production. It's on a fixed production schedule. We know how it'll slightly increase until it's all 21 million there. The next one was store value across time. Well, again, fiat currency or paper money, the supply will go crazy. It'll devalue your currency. The supply will never go crazy with Bitcoin. It'll never increase past 21 million. So a Bitcoin today is going to maintain, assuming all those Bitcoin works, it's going to maintain or increase its value over time. So you think of every other asset you have or could buy, it's going to depreciate over time. If you sit in cash and it depreciates, 5 to 7% a year because they keep printing more of it, well, you're going to lose half your value. So picture leaving cash to a generation in 100 years. Well, that's basically going to be worth nothing. We saw 99 depreciation in our earlier example of the US dollar. Or even land. People say, well, land, they're not making any more of it, right? All of our fathers, I think, have said that at one point. And I like land myself, but I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, land, I've got a building lot piece of land I own. Well, I pay around 2% tax on that a year. So if I wanted to leave that for 100 years,
It's gonna get
literally,
flooded.
eventually, 40, 50 years, all that money would be gone. Or my heirs would have to put more money in. But assuming, you just wanted to leave a $100,000 piece of land, well, really, the value's eroded with all those taxes. So Bitcoin is the ultimate store of value across time because we know they can't print any more of it. We talked about easily divisible, carrying around your big hunk of gold and trying to shave off a piece. Well, Bitcoin, it's digital currency, and it's divisible by 100,000. So if you take a Bitcoin, you divide it by 100,000, that's what we call a Satoshi, right? Like dollar cents. So it would be a Bitcoin. A Satoshi would be 1/1000th. So if you want to pay for something and it doesn't cost a whole Bitcoin, it only costs, 1/100th of a Bitcoin, great. You can pay by Satoshis. So it's easily divisible. And then what I really think is the key when you look at Bitcoin versus all the other cryptos. Every other crypto is backed by people. Someone started it that's still involved. Someone is pulling the lever. Someone can decide to change the rules. Somebody can decide to print more. Anytime you have people involved, there's going to be corruption. There's going to be greed. There's going to be problems. Satoshi gave us this gift and then went away, whether he's in a cave or dead or wherever he is. It was this beautiful gift. And there's no way to manipulate that 21 million supply because in order to do that, the Bitcoiners of the world, all over the world, would have to agree to that. And there's zero chance of that happening because once they agree to produce more Bitcoin, the Bitcoin would be useless. People wouldn't value Bitcoin anymore and Bitcoin would drop. So I think what we've kind of talked about here is all the problems of money we've solved, all the functions of money we've solved, and that's why Bitcoin is the ultimate standard for money. So it's the Bitcoin standard. So I absolutely love the book. And if you're learning about Bitcoin and you want to learn about Bitcoin, it's a short book and it's kind of that foundational piece on your Bitcoin education journey that you should tackle early on.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great book, but I think today, Darren, you summarized it very well too. So for everybody listening, this was a great summary of what they actually go through in the book. Obviously, they dig in a bit deeper, but yeah, that was awesome. I appreciate you sharing the knowledge because it's we got to keep learning about Bitcoin. It's not going anywhere. It's just getting better, right?
All right. Remember, we're not telling you to buy Bitcoin. We're telling you to educate yourself on Bitcoin. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Thanks for watching this episode of Control and Compound. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you never miss a new episode. And if you're ready to learn more, head to our website, controlandcompound.com. The link's below.